Commander Samuel Wright stood at the main viewport of Earth Defense Fleet headquarters, his eyes fixed on the gleaming ships that patrolled Earth's orbit. 20 years of service hadn't dulled his appreciation for humanity's achievements in space. The morning sun reflected off the hulls of the vessels, a testament to mankind's determination to protect their home. "Commander, we're picking up an unusual signal," Lieutenant Amy Ross called from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic display. "It's not matching any known patterns in our database." Wright walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds on the polished floor. "Show me," he said, leaning over to look at the readings. The signal patterns danced across the screen in elegant waves, nothing like the usual military or civilian communications they monitored. It was almost musical in its complexity. "Sir," Amy said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I think it's first contact." Before Wright could respond, the main screen lit up with a transmission. The image that appeared made everyone on the bridge gasp. A tall, elegant being with silvery skin and flowing robes stood before them. Its features were almost human-like, but with an otherworldly beauty that seemed to glow from within. "Greetings, people of Earth," the being said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Lyra 12 of the Aetherian Collective. We come in peace and wish to open diplomatic relations with your world." Wright straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "I am Commander Samuel Wright of the Earth Defense Fleet. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "If I may ask, how are you able to communicate in our language?" The ambassador smiled. "We have been studying your transmissions for some time. Your languages are quite fascinating, though not as complex as some we have encountered." In the following hours, the command center buzzed with activity. Government officials and diplomatic teams rushed to prepare for this historic moment. Wright couldn't help but notice how the Aetherian ambassador's eyes widened slightly whenever a military vessel passed by the station's windows. "Your vessels," Lyra 12 said during a break in the formal discussions. "They carry powerful weapons." "Yes," Wright replied honestly. "Earth has a long history of needing to defend itself." The ambassador's expression showed confusion. "But surely, once you reach the stars, you abandon such things. The cosmos holds too much wonder for warfare." Carol Hendricks, the lead Earth diplomat who had arrived an hour after first contact, stepped in smoothly. "Every species evolves differently, Ambassador. Humanity's path has taught us to be prepared while hoping for peace." The Aetherians, they learned, had developed their civilization without weapons. Their technology focused entirely on defense, healing, and exploration. They had evolved past the need for violence, turning their creative energies to art, science, and the pursuit of knowledge. As Wright listened to the discussions, he noticed something interesting. While the Aetherians spoke of peace and harmony, their eyes kept darting to the tactical displays and defense screens. They weren't afraid. Rather, they seemed fascinated. "We propose a meeting," Lyra 12 announced, "at the neutral space station you call Delta 9. Our full diplomatic team can meet with your representatives there." Lieutenant Peter Martinez, who had been quietly monitoring communications, caught Wright's eye and gestured for a private word. "Sir," Martinez said in a low voice once they were alone, "I've been analyzing their transmissions. There's something odd about the frequency patterns they're using. It's like they're—" He searched for the right words, "testing our defensive capabilities while they talk to us." Wright nodded slowly. "Keep monitoring. But don't mention this to anyone yet. We don't want to create unnecessary tension." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Earth's governments quickly agreed to the meeting at Delta 9. Though there was heated debate about how many warships should escort the diplomatic vessel. In the end, they settled on 3, enough to show strength without appearing threatening. As Wright prepared his ship for departure, he received a private transmission from Lyra 12. "Commander," the ambassador said, looking troubled, "I feel I must be honest with you. Our society has never encountered a species like yours before. A people who reach for the stars while carrying shields and swords. She paused, her silver skin shimmering slightly. "Some among my people fear you, others are intrigued. But all of us sense that meeting humanity will change us forever." Wright smiled gently. "Change isn't always bad, Ambassador. Sometimes it's necessary for growth." The journey to Delta 9 took 3 days. During that time, Wright noticed how the Aetherian ships moved. They were incredibly agile, their defensive shields more advanced than anything humanity had developed. Yet they had no weapons at all, not even basic defense turrets. As they approached the space station, Wright stood on his bridge, watching the Aetherian vessels glide gracefully alongside his ships. He couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was more than just first contact. It was a meeting of 2 different paths of evolution, one born of peace, the other tempered by war. Lieutenant Amy Ross's voice broke into his thoughts. "Sir, I'm picking up some unusual readings from the edge of the system. Very faint, but they don't match either our signatures or the Aetherians." Wright frowned. "Keep tracking them, but don't alert our guests yet. Let's not start our first diplomatic meeting with alarms." As they docked at Delta 9, Wright watched the Aetherian delegation prepare to board. Their ships were beautiful, all curves and flowing lines, like liquid metal frozen in space. They were the product of a civilization that had never needed to think about weapon placement or armor thickness. Yet as he observed them more closely, he noticed something else. The Aetherians moved with a precision that spoke of hidden strength. Their peace wasn't born of weakness, but of choice. And now, faced with a species that had chosen a different path, they were adapting, learning, changing. Just before he left his bridge to join the diplomatic team, Wright received one final report from Martinez. "Sir, those strange readings. They're getting stronger, and they're organized in a pattern that suggests, well, sir, it suggests someone's watching both us and the Aetherians." Wright nodded grimly. "Keep monitoring. Something tells me this first contact is about to become much more complicated than anyone expected." As he walked toward the station's main conference room, Wright couldn't help but think that perhaps this meeting between warriors and peacekeepers wasn't a coincidence. Perhaps the universe had brought them together for a reason, one that both civilizations would soon discover. The doors to the conference room slid open, revealing the assembled delegations from both worlds. As Wright took his place beside Carol Hendricks, he caught Lyra 12's eye. The ambassador nodded slightly, and in that moment, Wright realized that despite their differences, both their species were about to embark on a journey that would change them forever. The peace seekers had met the warriors of Sol, and the universe held its breath to see what would emerge from their union. The conference room aboard Space Station Delta 9 hummed with tension. Carol Hendricks watched as the Aetherian delegates examined the holographic display of Earth's defense systems with a mixture of horror and fascination. "You maintain these weapons even in times of peace?" asked Lyra 12, her silver skin rippling with concern. Carol took a deep breath before answering. "Our history has taught us to be prepared. Let me show you something." She pulled up images from Earth's historical archives. "This is World War II. This is the Cold War. These are the resource wars of the 2030s. The Aetherians watched in silence as scenes of human conflict played before them. Their expressions grew increasingly troubled. But why? A younger Aetherian named Sol 7 stepped forward. Why continue the cycle of violence when you could choose peace? Lieutenant Peter Martinez spoke up from his station at the back of the room. Sometimes peace must be defended. Not everyone in the universe chooses to be peaceful. The words hung in the air like a warning. Commander Wright noticed how several Aetherian delegates exchanged meaningful glances. "Perhaps," Lyra 12 said carefully, "you could tell us about your peaceful achievements as well." Carol smiled and switched the display to show hospitals, schools, and scientific research centers. "We're not just warriors. We're explorers, healers, and builders too. Our military exists to protect these things." As the diplomatic discussions continued, Peter Martinez kept his attention focused on his monitoring equipment. The strange signals he had detected earlier were growing stronger. He sent a quiet message to Commander Wright's personal display. Signal patterns increasing. Multiple sources now. Request permission to enhance scanning range. Wright gave a slight nod, and Martinez began expanding his search parameters. Meanwhile, the cultural exchange continued. The Etherians shared images of their own civilization, cities that seemed to grow from crystal and light, ships that moved through space like living beings, and defense systems that could redirect entire asteroids without causing any damage. "Your technology is amazing," Amy Ross said, studying the specifications of an Etherian shield system. "But what happens if something gets through? How do you stop it?" "We don't stop it," Sol 7 explained. "We redirect, deflect, or transform harmful energy into beneficial forms. Violence against violence only creates more violence." Commander Wright watched as his crew struggled with this concept. It went against everything their training had taught them. Yet he could see the wisdom in it, even if he didn't fully agree. The meeting was interrupted by a soft chime from Martinez's station. "Commander," he called out, his voice tight with concern. "Those signals, they're not random. They're coded communications, and they're coming from multiple points just outside our long-range scanner reach." The Etherian delegates suddenly grew very still. Lyra 12's skin shifted from silver to a pale blue. "You detect them too?" she asked quietly. "Two." Wright stepped forward. "Ambassador, what do you know about these signals?" Before she could answer, every screen in the conference room flickered. The lights dimmed momentarily, and when they came back up, new data was streaming across the displays. "Those are attack patterns," Martine said, his fingers flying over his console. "Someone's mapping both our defensive capabilities." The Etherians huddled together, their skin colors shifting rapidly. Sol 7 spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. We have seen these before, long ago, in our historical records." Carol moved closer to the Etherian group. "What historical records?" "Ambassador Lyra 12, if you know something about this threat, we need to know." The ambassador seemed to age before their eyes. "There are legends," she said slowly, "of a time before our people chose the path of peace, of why we chose it, of what drove us to abandon all weapons." Wright's tactical training kicked in. "You were attacked by whoever is sending these signals." "Not attacked," Sol 7 corrected. "Hunted. Our legends speak of hunters in the dark spaces. They would only appear when they found civilizations that had reached a certain level of advancement. He paused, his color turning almost white. They fed on conflict." Martinez's console beeped again. "Sir, the signal sources are moving. They're forming some kind of pattern around both Earth space and the Etherian sector. They're isolating us," Wright realized, "cutting us off from our home systems." Carol looked between the worried faces of both humans and Etherians. "Then we need to work together. Your defense technology, our combat experience, we might stand a chance if we combine them." "No." Several Etherian delegates spoke at once. "We cannot abandon our principles. Violence is not the answer." "With all due respect," Wright said firmly, "sometimes the answer finds you whether you're looking for it or not." The debate was cut short by a new alarm. Martinez's face went pale as he read the incoming data. "Sir, we're picking up ships. Hundreds of them. They were hiding behind some kind of cloaking technology we've never seen before. He swallowed hard. They're like nothing in our database." The main screen filled with images of the approaching vessels. They were dark, angular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where human ships were functional and Etherian ships were beautiful, these were purely predatory. "The Vorkath," Lyra 12 whispered. "They have returned." "The who?" Carol asked, but her question was answered by a transmission that suddenly filled every screen in the room. The image showed a being that seemed to be made of living shadow. Its voice was deep and resonated in their bones rather than their ears. Greetings, children of war and children of peace. Your civilizations have been chosen. Let us see which philosophy survives our attention. The transmission cut off, leaving the room in stunned silence. Wright was the first to recover. Ambassador, he said to Lyra 12, I know your people believe in peace, but right now, we need each other. Your defenses, our weapons, it might be our only chance. The ambassador looked around the room, at her fellow delegates, at the human crew members, at the dark ships approaching on the displays. Finally, she straightened to her full height. Perhaps, she said slowly, there is a third path. One that lies between pure peace and pure war. Sir, Martine is called out. The ships are moving into attack positions. We have maybe 2 hours before they're in range. Wright looked at Carol, who nodded. 2 hours to figure out how to merge 2 completely different philosophies of survival, she said. No pressure. The commander turned to address both human and Aetherian delegates. 2 hours to prove that peace and strength aren't opposites. They're companions. Let's make them count. As both groups began to work together, mixing teams and sharing knowledge, Wright couldn't help but think that maybe this was exactly what both civilizations needed. A reason to find the balance between the warrior and the peacekeeper. The Vorkath were coming, and they were about to learn that sometimes the greatest strength comes from unity between opposites. Time was running out on Space Station Delta 9. With less than 2 hours before the Vorkath came within attack range, both humans and Aetherians raced to combine their technologies. Major Daniel Hughes arrived from the Earth Defense Fleet's main carrier, walking quickly into the station's largest cargo bay. The space had been turned into a makeshift training area. Several Aetherians stood nervously near the entrance, their silver skin shifting between pale blue and gray colors. All right, Daniel said, keeping his voice gentle but firm. Your people have amazing defensive abilities. Now we need to learn how to use them actively rather than passively. Sol 7 stepped forward from the group. But we have never used our powers to harm. We're not learning to harm, Daniel explained. We're learning to protect. Sometimes the best defense is making sure your attacker can't hurt anyone else. In another part of the station, engineer Mary Sullivan worked with Aetherian scientists. Their fingers flew over control panels as they tried to merge human weapon systems with Aetherian shield technology. Look at this, Mary said, pointing to a display. Your shields don't just block energy. They can redirect it. What if we use that with our plasma cannons? The Aetherian scientist, Ren 4, tilted his head. You mean, take the aggressive energy and transform it? Exactly. Mary's eyes lit up. We could double the power while making it less destructive. Disable their ships without destroying them. Commander Wright stood on the bridge with Ambassador Lyra 12, watching the Vorkath fleets approach on the main screen. The enemy ships looked like black stars against space, somehow darker than the void around them. Their ships are designed to cause fear, Lyra 12 said softly. In our ancient records, they were called the Shadow Eaters because they seemed to swallow light itself. Lieutenant Martinez worked at his station, analyzing the enemy fleet. Sir, I'm detecting energy readings unlike anything we've seen before. Their weapons. He paused, double-checking his readings. Their weapons seemed to feed on both kinetic and potential energy. That's why they hunt both peaceful and warrior races, Carol Hendricks said, understanding dawning on her face. They consume both types of energy, the energy of violence and the energy of peace. In the cargo bay, Daniel watched as Sol 7 finally managed to turn an Aetherian defensive bubble into a pushing force. The young Aetherian's eyes widened as the training dummy flew across the room. I did not harm it, Sol 7 said, sounding surprised. I simply encouraged it to move somewhere else. Daniel smiled. That's exactly right. Sometimes the best way to stop a fight is to make sure your opponent can't reach you. Mary's voice came over the station's comm system. Commander, we've done it. We've managed to combine our technologies. The Aetherian shields can amplify our weapon's power while transforming it into non-lethal energy. Wright turned to Lyra 12. Will your people accept using these weapons? They're still weapons, even if they don't destroy. The ambassador was quiet for a moment. We must adapt or perish. Perhaps this is why our civilizations met, to learn from each other before this threat arrived. Suddenly, Martinez's console lit up with warnings. Sir, the Vorkath fleet is accelerating. They'll be here in 30 minutes, not 2 hours. They know what we're doing, Wright realized. They can sense us combining our technologies. All stations, battle positions, Wright commanded over the intercom. This is not a drill. Aetherian volunteers to your assigned human partners. Remember your training. The station hummed with activity as humans and Aetherians moved to their posts. In the weapon control room, Mary watched as Aetherian engineers merged their consciousness with the new hybrid weapons, their silver skin glowing with concentrated energy. Daniel led his group of Aetherian defenders to the station's shield generators. Remember, he told them, you're not fighting. You're protecting. Just like before, but now you're protecting everyone, not just yourselves. On the bridge, Wright watched as the first wave of Vorkath ships came into visual range. They moved like liquid darkness, flowing through space in patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. They're trying to intimidate us, Carol observed, using fear as a weapon. Lyra 12's skin shifted to a deep, steady blue. Fear only works if you let it control you. We chose peace not because we were afraid, but because we were strong enough to rise above fear. Multiple energy spikes. Martinez called out. They're powering up weapons. Wright straightened in his command chair. All stations, stand ready. Remember your training. Humans, trust your Aetherian partners. Aetherians, trust your human allies. We're stronger together than apart. The first Vorkath blast hit the station's new hybrid shields. Instead of the expected explosion, the dark energy was caught in a web of silvery light. The Aetherian engineers channeled it, transformed it, and sent it back as a wave of pure force that pushed 3 enemy ships off course. It's working. Mary's excited voice came over the comm. The hybrid systems are holding. In the shield control room, Daniel watched in amazement as his Aetherian students created complex patterns of defensive energy, turning the station's entire shield system into a living, responsive barrier. Any attack that hit it was absorbed, transformed, and redirected. Sir, Martins reported, the Vorkath are pulling back. They seem confused. On the main screen, they could see the dark ships regrouping. Their smooth, coordinated movements had become jerky and uncertain. They've never encountered this before, Lyra 12 said. The combination of peace and strength. They don't know how to consume energy that is both aggressive and peaceful at the same time. Wright allowed himself a small smile. Then let's press our advantage. All stations, prepare for coordinated defense. Show them what happens when warriors learn peace and peacekeepers learn to fight. As the station's hybrid weapons powered up and its living shields pulsed with combined human and Aetherian energy, Wright couldn't help but feel proud. In just a few hours, 2 completely different civilizations had learned to work together, finding strength in their differences rather than letting those differences divide them. The Vorkath were about to learn that the greatest power comes not from peace alone, or from war alone, but from finding the balance between the two. The first wave of Vorkath ships attacked with overwhelming force. Their dark energy weapons lashed out at Space Station Delta 9 like black lightning. But instead of destruction, they found something new: harmony. Commander Wright watched as the combined human-Aetherian defense system handled the assault. The station's shields, now alive with Aetherian energy, caught each blast and transformed it. Mary Sullivan's hybrid weapons turned the enemy's own power against them. Status report. Wright called out, his eyes fixed on the main screen. Shields at 92%. Lieutenant Martinez answered. The Aetherian enhancement is working better than we hoped. They're not just blocking the attacks, they're learning from them. Ambassador Lyra 12 stood beside Wright, her silver skin glowing with a steady blue light. Our people are adapting faster than I expected. They're beginning to understand that defense can be active rather than passive. In the shield control room, Major Daniel Hughes watched his Aetherian students work. Their hands moved in graceful patterns as they guided the energy flows. Sol 7, who had been so uncertain during training, now moved with confidence. They're changing their attack pattern, Sol 7 announced, his eyes fixed on the energy readings. The Vorkath are trying to find weak points in our defense. Daniel nodded. Then we change too. Remember what we practiced. Don't just block, redirect. Make them waste their energy. Mary's voice came over the comm system. Commander, the hybrid weapons are fully charged. The Aetherians have figured out how to store the converted energy from their attacks. Good, Wright replied. Prepare to return fire. Target their weapon systems only. Let's show them our new approach. The station hummed as the hybrid weapons powered up. Streams of silver-blue energy shot out, guided by Aetherian precision and human tactical knowledge. Where they struck the Vorkath ships, the dark metal began to glow and then fade, their weapons going silent. Direct hits, Martinez reported. 3 enemy ships have lost weapons power. They're pulling back. But the Vorkath weren't done. A second wave of ships moved forward, these even darker than the first. Their forms seemed to bend the light around them, making them hard to track. Energy spike, Martinez called out. This is different. They're trying something new. The attack came not as weapons fire, but as a wave of pure darkness that rolled toward the station. Where it passed, stars seemed to vanish. They're trying to drain all energy in the area, Lyra 12 said, her voice tight with concern. This is how they defeated our ancestors, by stealing the very energy of life itself. In the weapon control room, Mary watched her displays flash red. Standard weapons aren't working against this. There's nothing solid to hit. But Sol 7 had an idea. He reached out to the other Aetherian defenders through their shared consciousness. Don't fight the darkness, he told them. Match it. Show it peace. The Aetherians around the station began to glow brighter. Instead of trying to block or redirect the darkness, they let their natural energy flow outward. The peaceful light of their civilization met the consuming darkness of the Vorkath. Look, Carol Hendricks pointed at the main screen. Where light met darkness, neither won. Instead, they began to mix, creating a new kind of energy that neither side had seen before. The hybrid weapons, Mary called out. They're responding to the new energy pattern. Commander, if we fire now, we might be able to disrupt their entire attack. Wright looked at Lyra 12, who nodded. Do it, he ordered. The station's weapons fired. But instead of beams of destructive force, they released waves of transformed energy. The hybrid technology, combining human precision with Aetherian peace, cut through the darkness like sunlight through storm clouds. Vorkath ships began to fall back, their dark hulls now streaked with lines of silver light. Their perfect formation broke apart as ship after ship lost power. They can't consume this type of energy, Lyra 12 said, understanding dawning in her voice. It's neither pure peace nor pure violence. It's balance. Daniel watched as his Aetherian students maintained their defense with steady hands. They had learned to fight without abandoning their peaceful nature, to be strong without becoming violent. Multiple ships powering down, Martinez reported. The rest are falling back to regroup. But sir, there's a bigger ship coming. Much bigger. The main screen showed a massive Vorkath vessel emerging from the darkness of space. It was like a black hole given form, its surface seeming to eat light itself. Their command ship, Wright said grimly. They're not going to let this end easily. Carol stepped forward. They can't afford to. If word spreads that they can be defeated, other civilizations might learn to fight back. The massive ship's presence seemed to fill all the screens, its darkness threatening to overwhelm their sensors. But Wright noticed something interesting. The Aetherians weren't afraid anymore. They stood at their posts with quiet confidence, their silver skin glowing steadily. "Commander," Mary's voice came over the comm, "the Aetherian engineers have an idea. They think we can modify the hybrid weapons to create a feedback loop. Use the Vorkath's own darkness against them, but transform through our combined technology. It's never been done before," Lyra 12 said. "Combining peace and war energy on such a scale, it could be dangerous." Wright looked around at his crew, human and Aetherian working side by side, each bringing their own strengths to the fight. Sometimes the most important battles are the ones where we risk everything to protect what matters. As the massive Vorkath ship moved closer, Wright gave the order to begin charging the hybrid weapons for one massive burst. The station hummed with power as Aetherian peace energy flowed into human weapon systems, creating something entirely new. The darkness of the Vorkath command ship reached out toward them like hungry shadows. But this time, instead of fear, it was met with unity. Warriors who had learned peace, peacekeepers who had learned strength. Two civilizations that had found balance in their differences. Wright looked at his tactical display and allowed himself a small smile. The Vorkath were about to learn that true power comes not from consuming energy, but from transforming it. Not from forcing others to choose between peace and war, but from finding the strength to embrace both. The massive Vorkath command ship loomed before Space Station Delta 9 like a piece of midnight come alive. Its surface rippled with dark energy that made the sensors struggle to maintain a lock. "All power to the hybrid systems," Commander Wright ordered. "Everyone to their stations. This is the moment we've trained for." In the shield control room, Major Daniel Hughes watched his Aetherian students take their positions. Sol 7 stood at the main control panel, his silver skin glowing with quiet confidence. The young Aetherian who had once feared any form of conflict now moved with the grace of someone who had found his true purpose. "Ready when you are, Commander," Daniel reported over the comm system. Engineer Mary Sullivan's voice came next. "Hybrid weapons charged at maximum capacity. The Aetherian engineers have synchronized their energy patterns perfectly with our targeting systems." Ambassador Lyra 12 stood on the bridge beside Wright, watching the enormous dark ship approach. "They will try to break our unity," she said softly. "It's what they fear most, civilizations learning to work together, to be both strong and peaceful." As if to prove her words, the Vorkath command ship released a wave of energy unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't just darkness, it was discord itself, trying to break the harmony between human and Aetherian systems. "Shield frequency destabilizing," Martinez called out. "They're trying to force our technologies to reject each other." But Sol 7 had anticipated this. "Push back with harmony," he told his fellow Aetherians. "Show them what true unity looks like." The Aetherian defenders began to glow brighter, their peaceful energy flowing into the human shield systems. Instead of fighting the discord, they embraced it, transformed it, made it part of their defense. "It's working," Daniel reported, watching the energy readings stabilize. "The shields are actually getting stronger." The Vorkath ship launched its next attack, beams of pure darkness that sought to drain all energy from their systems. But Mary's hybrid weapons were ready. As each dark beam struck, the combined human Aetherian technology absorbed it, transformed it, and sent it back as pure light. "Multiple hits on their main weapon arrays," Martinez reported. "Their energy drainage systems are failing." Carol Hendricks, who had been analyzing the Vorkath ship's reactions, suddenly straightened. "Commander, look at their attack pattern. They're not just trying to destroy us. They're trying to understand how we achieve this unity. They've never seen anything like it." Wright nodded. "Then let's show them exactly what happens when peace and strength work together. All stations, prepare for maximum power output. Channel everything through the hybrid systems." The station began to hum with power as human and Aetherian energy flowed together. The peaceful light of the Aetherians merged with the focused strength of human technology, creating something entirely new. "Sir," Mary's voice came over the comm, excited but controlled. "The hybrid weapons are showing energy readings off the scale. The Aetherian engineers say they can channel even more power if we need it." The Vorkath command ship seemed to sense what was coming. It began to pull back, its surface churning with dark energy as it tried to bring more weapons online. "They're preparing for another attack," Martins warned. "Energy buildup in their main systems." "Not this time," Wright said firmly. "Fire all hybrid weapons. Show them what unity really means." The station's weapons released their power all at once, but instead of destruction, they sent forth waves of transformed energy. Human strength guided by Aetherian peace, war, and harmony working as one. The blast struck the Vorkath ship like sunrise striking darkness. Where the energy touched, the ship's black surface began to change, dark metal becoming suffused with silver light. The discord that powered their weapons transformed into harmony. "Their systems are shutting down," Martins reported, his voice filled with wonder. "The hybrid energy. It's not destroying them, it's changing them." Through the main viewport, they watched as the massive Vorkath ship's surface continued to transform. The darkness that had made it so terrifying began to fade, replaced by a soft, silvery glow similar to the Aetherian ships. "They're sending a transmission," Carol announced. The main screen showed the same shadowy figure as before, but now it seemed less threatening, more solid. Its voice, when it came, had lost its bone-chilling quality. "We have existed for countless ages," it said, consuming the energy of war and peace, keeping civilizations divided so they could never reach their full potential. "But this," the figure seemed to struggle for words. "This unity you have achieved, it offers a different path." Ambassador Lyra 12 stepped forward. "Then choose to walk it with us. Learn, as we have, that true strength comes not from division, but from harmony." The Vorkath ships, now all glowing with transformed energy, began to withdraw. But it wasn't a retreat, it was a peaceful departure. Their commander spoke one last time. "We will return, not as hunters, but as seekers of this new way you have shown us." As the ships disappeared into the darkness of space, Wright looked around at his crew. Humans and Aetherians working side by side, their differences no longer dividing them, but making them stronger. Sol 7, who had come to the bridge after the battle, spoke softly. "We thought we had to choose between peace and strength, but the real choice was learning how to combine them." In the days that followed, both civilizations began to change. The Aetherians started incorporating defensive combat training into their society, while humans learned to temper their military might with peaceful technology. The hybrid systems developed on Delta 9 became the foundation for a new kind of space fleet, one dedicated to protecting peace through balanced strength. Commander Wright stood with Ambassador Lyra 12 in the station's observation deck, watching ships from both civilizations patrol together. "Do you think they'll really change?" he asked, thinking of the Vorkath. "They already have," Lyra 12 replied. "Just as we have. Just as your people have." Sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating an enemy, but from showing them a better way. As Wright looked out at the stars, he realized that this was just the beginning. The warriors of Sol had learned the value of peace, while the peacekeepers of Aether had found their inner strength. Together, they had created something new, a force that could face any challenge not through fear or violence, but through unity and balance. The universe would never be the same, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.